Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Rebecca Sykes. I was originally an aeronautical engineer before studying renewable energy systems at Loughborough University. I went on to study hydrodynamics for wave energy at University College Cork in Ireland before joining a renewables consultancy called Garda-San, where I wrote their software as a design tool for wave energy converters. I joined Lloyd's Register in 2011 to work in R&D for renewables and left in 2019, having worked in business development and some digital innovation as well. I've since been working as an independent consultant designing systems for removing plastic from the oceans, and I'm pleased to be doing an MA in ecological design thinking at Plymouth University, together with working with Susan on the IRO project. And in the light of this, I'm going to talk today about reimagining how we work with the ocean. So why do we as scientists, researchers, engineers need to reimagine how we work with the oceans? I'll let you have a moment to think before I continue. I'd say as engineers and scientists, we work within complex and often competing fields. We juggle corporate priorities, diminished funding, economic and environmental issues, and global politics. And the priorities are changing. We're living in a world where we've overshot what's been called, or are called, the planetary boundaries. On the left-hand side here, we have the mapping by the Stockholm Resilience Institute of the dimensions of the planetary boundaries. It shows from their analysis that we're exceeding the limits in the areas of nitrogen and phosphorus loading and species extinction, which are the orange areas. We're also in uncertain territory in terms of climate change and land use change, which are the yellow areas extending into the mid part of that radial graph. On the right-hand side, we have the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And despite all our societal and technological development, we're not meeting the basic needs of people. Billions fall short of their basic needs every day. Yet we're already overshooting into the global ecological danger zones. This is a tension we're creating through our activities with their social, technical and economic dimensions. As we've evolved our societies and technologies, some people have safer, better lives, but we've been part of a great acceleration, which means we're overshooting these planetary boundaries, and so we are no longer safe. We now have a new responsibility. We've not had this before, but we now affect our planet. Our previous ways of working are not robust enough for the wide fields of knowledge we need to deliver success in this complex world we occupy. Some say we need a new compass, and in this case, a 21st century compass, and a chart to help us shape our course. And Kate Raworth, an economist, has built on the idea of the planetary limits and added the social foundation to reflect the Sustainable Development Goals, and came up with the donut, which was published in her book Donut Economics. This shows the ecological ceiling, the 9 planetary boundaries, which were developed by this Earth system science, and which, as far as we know, the current Holocene-like climate will be sustained if we stay within. And this is the climate that society's flourished in, and it's been stable for about 10,000 years since the start of agriculture. We don't know what happens when we exceed the planetary limits. The Earth system are massively complex and liable to irreversible shifts in new system states. The inner part of the donut is a social foundation based on the Sustainable Development Goals. We need enough of some things for us all to thrive, this social foundation goal in the middle, but not to use so much of them that we damage the planet. If you're in the middle, it means you're not getting enough of those social foundation things, and if you're using too much, we're causing damage. We're going through the outside of line of the outer circle, the limit of what the planet can cope with, and then the planet and all of us are in danger. Kate and others are advocating for a balanced approach where the goal is thriving in balance. And this replaces the thinking of an ever-increasing line of GDP growth. This means we need to shift society into this green ring, which she terms the safe and just space for humanity. So it's a series of dimensions to be balanced. It can be used as a snapshot to develop an understanding of how we are doing, maybe a place is doing, maybe a project is doing. It's also an instigator of conversations which will help plan and shape the path forwards. And in this way, we called it a compass. So when we look at how we're doing on a planetary scale, as donut economics calls it, we get a clearer picture. We're massively exceeding the planetary boundaries for biodiversity loss and nitrogen and phosphorus loading. We are in areas of increased uncertainty for climate change and change in land use. And as I say, we're not meeting the needs of billions of people on every metric. Each of these dimensions has an indicator associated with them. So for climate change, it's CO2 concentration. For work, one of the indicators is the population living on less than the international poverty line of $3.10 per day. But it's more than an image which captures the imagination. It's a tool for action and collaboration. And this tool is now being adopted in cities such as Amsterdam, Portland, Brussels, and was recently advocated by the President of Ireland at a recent Engineers Ireland lecture. Groups are taking up and establishing, and they're taking this forward in the UK, in Devon and Cambridge. They're working together to see how their town, city or region is shaping up and bringing local governments together with business and communities. So it's not just an analysis, but a means of guiding design, especially when one asks, how are we going to move into this safe space? How are our businesses, projects, communities going to work differently? So coming back to our question of why do we need to reimagine how we work with the oceans? We go to the ocean to meet human need. If we as a society are redrawing our goals, then we need to work in the oceans in a different way. And the oceans are often overlooked. Yet we're entering a decade which the UN has declared a decade of ocean science. And what an opportunity is this? Science for purpose, for better conservation, for working within planetary boundaries, to help meet the social foundation. So the use of the donut model can help us to check our projects are diverse in benefits and help us to move into that safe and just space that Kate describes. It can also be multi-layered, comprehensive analytical lens, a tool to provide that map and compass and view the complexity of our projects. We as engineers and scientists can work to cultivate positive knock-on effects, not negative ones, to be restorative, regenerative, because we're curious and creative. We can create the solutions to new goals set by humanity collaboratively with other organisations and people that are working within that ocean space. So what would a project look like that sequestered carbon, mitigated nitrogen and phosphorus loading, created food and local jobs? How about this one, which is by Greenwave, and which creates a platform of education for fishers to move towards a regenerative aquaculture model. So it's distributing education by design. This is an image of a particular, I guess, envisaged farm, regenerative aquaculture farm, but their model is much more about sharing this knowledge with a large number of fishers. It sequesters carbon and builds an ecosystem in the location. Observation is important when stewarding an ecosystem, enabling identification of biota present, chemical conditions of seawater and physical metocean characteristics before starting a project. Is there a need here we as engineers can support? How could we help monitor how these ecosystems work so we can understand them better and help us cultivate them? How do we source, manage and analyse the data needed to know whether we are exceeding our ecological ceiling or the contribution of a project to that? In the work with IRO, I'm starting to explore how we could reimagine a wind farm in the context of these new goals. When working with the donut thinking, one considers changing the goal but that we also need to embed the economy within Earth systems. We consider that we are social and adaptable humans and that we live in a world of dynamic complexity. We consider that we are distributive by design and regenerative by design, and we're agnostic about economic growth. So in changing the goal, the Donut Economics Lab and Biomimicry 3.0 are testing and using a local and global ecological and social lenses, which you see up in the left. This has been applied to a city. In the local ecological, we might ask, can a wind farm thrive within its natural habitat? How does it reciprocate with the Earth systems around it? And what should the goals be in that area? In the global ecological, what are its climate change credentials? What should the goal be? For example, moving through the dimensions. I've put up the one for climate change here, just to give you some indications about a potential target, maybe some of the metrics that might be used for a snapshot, and perhaps some of the gaps that we have within the knowledge to be able to actually produce a snapshot for a wind farm. So if we had to draw an ocean donut, what would it be? Where would we get our inspiration? Would it be an inflatable ring full of fun that we have either in the pool or at the sea? Would it be a ring bubble like the ones that are created by dolphins and divers? I'd really appreciate your thoughts and your suggestions for what imagery we might best use to describe our donut of the ocean. Thank you very much.